Yeah, and but I do think the issue of excellence and getting behind it is key. And Randy, you're actually an important case study in that matter. You actually go out and commission artists that you believe in as a collector. When you commissioned Damien Gilly to do that that lobby space for the building that you developed and created, that is the type of patronage that forwards the things. You know, that's not the type of work that people buy in Portland galleries, and it's almost like you need to grow new organs in order for things to happen. So what you're talking about is talent and excellence being a key and crucial component. I've always thought it would be great if, you know, we had a mayor's award or whatnot, and it wasn't just for the arts. I think you pick like 10 people a year in Portland in 10 different disciplines, and you highlight them. And it's always people who are on the rise, who haven't gotten attention yet. And it's almost like a way of forwarding and shining a light on excellence as it's coming up. Because what happens is, these people are actually gonna end up, if they're good, they're gonna find a way to bust through one way or another. But it's nice for the city, in a way, to kind of give them an attaboy before, you know, they've blown up and are showing in Documenta.
Yeah, I would just like to finish my point regarding Randy's remark. Yeah, so what I mean is like the institutions are doing enough, and they are doing their job, and they are there to do their job. But I think us as people, we have the ideas and we have the logistics. There is an army of young artists and writers and musicians who are willing to help the city have a big event, you know, using what's going on in the world, you know. And but right now, they can't do it because it's not happening. The event is not happening, and I think we can make it happen. Instead of waiting for the event, we can make the event happen, you know. And there are many organizations and ways of getting money outside of Portland to make that happen, you know. And we can even. Okay.
I
have a question for you, Mack. Two questions. One, how will your program reflect your feelings that there is an absence of criticism? And then the second question is, how does being a good neighbor, something that you guys have advertised as being virtuous, right, which is sort of undeniable, unimpeachable, how does being a good neighbor not preclude a high level of discourse or criticism, right, in a small town, which is also an unimpeachable fact?
And all art scenes are small towns, by the way. The whole art world is a small town, if you want to think about it.
I don't think I'm the smartest man in the room to answer the second question.
Yeah.
I think that for me, I think you have to have a thick skin, right? And so when one does something, you want your peers and colleagues. I mean, the man asking the question is the curator at YU, it should be said, I think. So it's like, I want that man to talk to me about the things I'm doing and to be sharp. But I have to have the thick enough skin to deal with it and not then retaliate in my Facebook posts or any other sort of like ways in which we retaliate against each other in the 21st century.
Or be a professional is what you're saying.
Right, to be a professional. Right, maybe that's one way of saying it. The first question is how I reflect the idea of the crisis of criticism in my programming is through slowly trying to do more scholarly writings around exhibitions and just starting to produce more things. I mean, there's definitely whispers in the winds of new blogs and new places for criticisms, and trying to help foster those, like just getting out there and talking about the sort of crisis of criticisms that we face here, I think is in one way of dealing with it. And then through an institutional, like for my position, is really about then trying to support those, and maybe it's going back to that idea of good neighbor, and really trying to be a good neighbor to people who are doing things. I mean, PNCA is a sponsor on Port, like many people are, so we are in fact in that sort of realm already. I mean, we're all in bed together, right? we might as well quit kicking each other in the sleep and really try to get along.
Great.
Mine's more of a question than comments. I keep hearing a lot about institutions, U.S. institutions, partnership institutions, also a lot about the creative community and the art that's being made. Can you guys address specifically the strengths and weaknesses of the gallery scene? And not so much the galleries that are nonprofit and are not concerned about making a living, but specifically a handful of galleries that are owned by gallery owners and the activists to not only make a living, but show work by local artists and also bring in artists from outside of Portland. Do you feel like they are doing a good job of it? And do you feel like there's even a collector community that will buy your work, that we try to show?
Right. Well, like, like the traditional way of perceiving all of those situations is like you have a scene, and in that scene you have galleries, and galleries, they sell work, they don't show work to encourage people to see something progressive and new, they sell product, and they make money. And you have then the people who have been working with them for a while, which can be 10 to 20 to 30 years, and who are very loyal to them, and they have this relationship, and they will try to create an identity around it. And you have something else, which is you have an art school, and you have a city, and you have a lot of young people who are very ambitious and who are creative and who want to make things that are very interesting and challenging, so that they can just for the sake of advancement, just being a better world, better people, thinking in different ways, And those kids, those artists, those young artists, they will not be shown in those galleries. So the alternative is to create spaces where they can be exhibited, And the problem is, if you do that, you can be trapped in doing that, and then because the same people are going to come and over and over and over and see, and it's going to be in a bubble. So your strategy would be to break that bubble and bring it out there. How can you do that? To bring a new clientele, to bring a new crowd, to bring a new public. But Portland is small, so you have to bring those people from maybe the Northwest or the furthest, maybe Chicago. So how can you do that is to bring attention to the city and what we are doing. And the way we can do that is to also bring people who are not just young Americans they have in their own city, who can kind of create something new and an event. And then they come here and they see everything. So that's basically how it works.
It's an attitude of openness. We haven't really gotten that many new galleries, even though, and I think it's because it's the same collector base. Although a lot of new people have moved here, I've seen in my own neighborhood, a lot of Europeans are buying houses. It's new collectors, major collectors have moved to town, and people don't even know they're living here yet. And it takes a little while to make that sort of thing happen. You almost need to create a gravitational pull around. Usually a gallerist has one or two artists that suddenly blow up, and that creates a gravitational pull around which you can fund your other things. Usually if you want to be a successful gallerist, it usually starts, if you want to make a small fortune, start with a large fortune, and you're willing to sort of roll up your sleeves and make that happen that way, and that it ultimately monetizing it is helpful, but don't necessarily expect it to happen, but pace yourself. Also, speaking of what you were talking about, a crisis of criticism, the thing is, most people don't understand criticism, and it's always talked about a crisis of criticism. The fact of the matter is that art is about crisis. Ever since Manet's Olympia, art has been about crisis, and it's no longer the Academy being supported by lords and earls. So criticism in and of itself doesn't have a crisis. Criticism is crisis. Art is crisis. And what you need to be able to be is honest about the crises that you are engaging, and speak it with a certain force that can be agreed with, disagreed with, discarded, whatnot, but which when you hit it, you have to be affected by it, and that's what happens with the art as well. If the art is engaging a crisis that is incredibly difficult to avoid, let's say when there was a big financial meltdown, all of a sudden this artist goes at the Guggenheim, I forget his name, basically took his $100,000 stipend and put the $100,000 on the wall. And there was a certain blowback that happened in New York at the time with that, in that, and his name is escaping me at the moment, and he was a European artist. The crisis that created was suddenly, it became an institutional critique by the artist of the institution, and everybody is saying, oh, the Guggenheim is part of the 1%, and there was this massive blowback. It was a hated piece. I say it was probably a very successful piece because it was hated, and I think, you know, part of the problem sometimes is that as Portlanders, we are very good neighbors. I'm personal friends of both these guys. I've curated shows in both their spaces. Hell, I've probably curated shows in all of your spaces. But the fact of the matter is you need to be able to be willing to have Modou say, this is crap to you, in order to know whether you've actually ever done something good or bad or indifferent. You need to be honest about the crisis. And then let's talk about the specifics of that crisis. The crisis for the artist who put the money on the wall at the Guggenheim was he was showing wealth blatantly at a time that wealth was disappearing, and that the Guggenheim as a major museum is seen as basically a repository of rich people's money.
So I just want to mention that you know, I don't think that there is a lack of talent in Portland. You know, it's the art here is really good. You know, and seriously, you know, like you go anywhere else, you know, like you'll see the same or worse. You know, seriously, no, I'm honest. You know, like the art is really good here. You know, but we cannot tell because we don't have like people coming from the outside and tell us. And yeah. So to me, there is not a problem of communication. Like everything we do here is good. We just don't have enough people to appreciate it.
Or you got to appreciate it with enough force. You know, if you are interested in artists and you have the means to make a difference, by all means, you know, you don't have to give them $10,000. Give them a small amount to make it happen. Yes.
Okay. I guess on the topic of crisis, it kind of seems to me like, or what attracted me to this lecture is that it seems like, for me, what's going on here is a crisis of self-worth. When you mentioned this idea that notoriety has kind of ended or started this self-consciousness for Portland, that major publications have been noticing Portland for a really long time, and that's ended this ability for Portland to sort of create art in a quiet place. It seems like the discussion of what's going to end this crescendo that sort of keeps falling away, that seems like that quiet place is the exact environment that would nurture the type of emerging artist, a group of artists that everyone seems to keep wanting.
Right.
And actually, Portland is quiet, honestly, compared to New York or Los Angeles, easily.
Yeah, we just don't want you guys to go away. Because, you know, if you don't get the money you need to live here and make your art, you move out. You go to LA.
It is a brain drain.
You know, and that's the problem. We want you to stay here.
Yeah, there are token moves that I wish were happening. I wish that there was an annual show or a series of shows that were given to worthy young artists, and a series that you could just say, oh, here's the Seco Awards. These are the, okay, you were nominated, that means you should be tracked. Then suddenly everybody tracks you. That sort of tracking isn't occurring, and I think, and it's token, actually. But the thing is the art world is incredibly hard. Most artists are never going to make the most of it, but giving out crumbs actually allows people to, you know, kind of keep going, and eventually, if they have the talent, they will string it all together and kind of create this constellation of success that is sort of, you can't chart it. You can't, for every successful artist, you would never in a million years write that script.
You know, one great conversation we can have with Europe is that you can be an artist and have a career there without having to worry about money, because your state or your province support you, and also, you know, there are many ways of which, like, the society just support you as an individual. So, but here, you know, you have to get a job, you know, to make money and pay your bills and be an artist. And but what's great about Portland is the situation is not as it is in New York or LA, where it's, you know, way harder. So one collaboration we can have is to bring those artists from Europe in and have them create this residency and atelier or exhibition or biennale with the Portland scene, so that they are aware of us and we are aware of them, and we can create a bridge of communicating and also exhibiting.
Yeah, definitely. I think like the main thing to always remember is that the art world, like any other profession out there that you may all also do a day job in, is that it all works through relationships, right? Like everything that we do is through some sort of relationship in the end. And the more that we can build on the relationships that we have within our own networks and building those networks outwards, which, you know, like network is like this word like synergy that like sends the hackles up on the backs of every 99%er's neck. But it really is, I mean, maybe somebody can, in the audience, and I can come up with another word for the network. Say?
Community.
The community. I always reach for my wallet and gun when I hear the word community.
So networking, community.
Yeah, exactly. But like really, I mean, I love this idea of that we could do a sort of international art thing here, like maybe the Carnegie Triennial. That we could really have something like that would also help us build our communities. And maybe one way of starting to do that is through just starting to ask people like, well, who do you know? And who could you have help us bring here? And how can we start filling the empty condos here with artist residency spaces? I mean, that's the thing that like so many PNCA would love. If somebody has an empty condo that we could put an artist residency in at PNCA, I would love to talk to you.
Right.
Like those sort of things are really important.
See how you guys feel about the curator's responsibility for some of this, and also, is it safe? Is the work here safe? And who is responsible for that then, if that's what we deliver to?
What do you mean by is it safe?
That's what I'm asking you. What do you think?
What is it?
Well, I mean, it's twofold. I think that there's some institutions that are very safe, and the thing is they sense this. They're concerned about it. They contact me. We talk, and they're doing tours, and they're trying to get a handle on why they're not sort of as relevant as they want to be. At the same time, there are curators like Chris Moss, who I called out earlier today on Port. He does a great job of pretty much of any institution, and it's not Mack's job to highlight the hottest young Portland artists. That's not his job. But there are a few institutions that have curatorial positions that are focused very much on Portland artists, and these are sort of seen as stepping stones, and they're important stepping stones. And I think Chris Moss probably does the best job, and you know what? It's in McMinnville.
Mack is a creator. You know, I create shows. I'm an artist, but you know, I create shows. You know, like the show that is at work sound right now is from San Francisco, which I co-created with another creator from San Francisco, who had a blast, you know, coming here and doing that show. And if you go see the show, it's a great show. And Robert is here, and we have other or the creator in town. So yeah, it's safe. Portland is super safe. You know, we are super confident and mature and intellectual to deal with very heavy stuff. You know, and but we have to do it. We have to sit down and have a model, have a plan, and give us 2-3 years and do something big. I think it's time. I just think it's time for Portland to do something big.
I agree with you that the time is here, and I just wonder sometimes about innovation and programming sometimes.
Well, like if you are working in a place which you have to deal with, you know, like having friends and, you know, having a community and having a family, you know, like the question of quality is not a question, you know, because at the end of the day, we just want everybody to be happy, you know, and then when it comes to a bigger business, then there you have, you know, a bigger matter to do, and then you have a better selection for sure, right? You know, so that's not an issue, you know, so.
Steve?
I think that Mack is really hitting on something I'm interested in terms of this connecting Portland to more international audiences and more, in particular, more artists and curators is what I'm interested in. And I think it happens the same way it's always happened. It happens by Mack and Modou traveling to Europe. I went last summer. Paul Middendorf was doing his, you know, we bring artists over from Europe. And I think that ultimately the larger shifts in the city are going to start occurring more because those of us who came here 10, 15 years ago are people who are now infiltrating and creating those new institutions.
Right.
So there'll be a new, it's happening.
Yeah.
As we speak, it's in flux. And I also want to state that I think there's value in a kind of being in an adversarial position as a city, as a community, and saying, we don't accept this one way that, you know, when you go to New York, you're right next to the sort of the belly of the beast, right? The sort of like hype capitalism. And then you go, and the art scene has to reflect that, right? When you're in a place like this, of course, it's not like we're in some sort of socialist utopia, but, you know, we could take, there are certain things that we value differently here, and I think that the art scene reflects that as well.
Yeah, if we're going to be such a European city, it behooves us to have more European ties, and with other places too. And just being in Houston last year with the show that there's currently a show up at Gallery Homeland now called Southern Pacific, and Paul was basically recreating the Southern Pacific Railroad. We did a show last August in Houston. I put a piece up that was a piece of installation art, and I had a collector within about 15 minutes of the opening looking to buy the piece, and it was sort of like, oh, okay, this is very different. And you need to open up and here's something I should point out. All artists, all institutions, all patrons are somewhat taken for granted in their home city unless they can get out